A very good morning to you. Welcome along to Thursday morning's OTB AM. Owen is here after his brief sojourn.
Yeah.
Somewhere in a field in Sheffield. Where were you?
Somewhere in a field in Sheffield, yeah. I wasn't in a field in Sheffield. I was in a field in Ireland for most of the last few days.
What was on?
Well, Forbidden Fruit was on, and then LCD Sound System was on 2 nights ago.
You went to LCD Sound System?
Yeah, it was kind of like a week where a lot of things happened all at once, where I kind of had all my tickets arrive from Ticketmaster and was like, holy crap, these are all go back to back to back. It's like a festival within 1 week, essentially.
It's the same place, no?
No, LCD was in Malahide.
Okay.
Forbidden Fruit was in Kilmainham.
Right.
And, you know, LCD Sound System are the best band of our generation, so obviously that was amazing. That was obviously the highlight.
Did you go to Forbidden Fruit both nights?
Well, I went to Sunday. I was here on the Saturday. I didn't bother going to Saturday. I went to Sunday and Monday.
Right.
So the War on Drugs as well. War on Drugs and LCD Sound System are two of the best bands of our generation. So
I mean, LCD Sound System kind of a band of a generation slightly older than you as well. I would have assumed that you were one of the youngest at LCD Sound System, where you were one of the oldest at Forbidden Fruit.
yeah, exactly. So it kind of went on an upward hill, the kind of average age. Sunday was the annual kind of day of appreciation of me getting a year older, where you look around and you're like, everybody's wearing Steph Curry jerseys and they're all 17 and like how are you even in this place kind of thing, and then it gets older and older and older. But I think our generation has kind of tapped into that a little bit now. I think it's...
Did you bump into any of your buddies or any of your work colleagues on Sunday night, or did you late text any of them going, where the fuck are you, for example?
I don't think so, no.
You did, yeah, you did.
No, that was...
Kevin Kilban got like a, what's this? He was like, oh my God.
That was not Sunday, that was Monday, because Kevin Kilban, when we had him in the studio on Saturday, said he was going to see the War on Drugs. Himself and Colin Young are both fans of the War on Drugs, and they didn't show up.
No.
I'd promised people that Kevin Kilban was going to be showing a face after.
Oh, okay, right.
After he showed a face at Interpol last year at Electric Picnic. So
my celebrity friend was like, yeah, you're winning. Oh no, Owen's let us down.
It's I charged €5 in advance for a photograph of Kevin Kilban, and my little lemonade stand plan had gone down the drain.
That didn't work at all. The Ireland team has been named for the first test against Australia, and Joey Carbery is in at 10. It's a really interesting team. I'll give you the full team actually, and we're going to talk about it a little bit later on with Alan Quinlan, who's down in Brisbane. Also going to hear from Craig Breen. Also going to talk about the weekend's GAA with Cahair O'Kane of the Irish News. We'll run you through the sports pages in a minute. But the starting 15, Jack McGrath, Rob Herring and John Ryan makes up a pretty interesting front row. Then it's James Ryan, Ian Henderson, Peter Mahoney, Geordie Murphy and CJ Standers. So it's not the first choice front row, but it's definitely the first choice back five. Conor Murray and Joey Carbery, the all-Munster half-back pairing. Keith Earls and Jacob Stockdale on the wings. Robbie Henshaw, Bundy Aki, 12 and 13, and Rob Kearney is at 15. So Sean Cronin, Cian Healy and Tadhg Furlong will, I presume, get into the game around about an hour and see the game out. Then it's Quinn Roux is the, he does very well in these summer tests, Quinn Roux, all the way back to the one in South Africa 2 years ago, where it looked like he was playing himself into the team. But certainly Joe Schmidt seems to trust him in these circumstances. Jack Conan is the only cover for the back row. Kieran Marmion, Johnny Sexton and Jordan Larmour are the back subs there. So Tadhg Byrne is the only one really missing out. You're like, I'd like to really see exactly how Tadhg Byrne's going to do in this circumstance, and I guess he's definitely going to see some game time at some point and probably next week. And you would also expect that Sexton will start the second game. So all of the newspapers knew that Joey Carbery was starting. That was confirmed just this morning at 7 o'clock. But I guess anybody who's made the trip down under has been getting the team in advance for the newspapers this morning. Yeah,
for sure. It's an exciting team. It's one that you can actually foresee the front row of Australia, just a look of fear in their face around 60 minutes when Jack McGrath, Rob Herring and John Ryan all get taken off around that point, and on comes the backups in Sean Cronin, Cian Healy and Tadhg Furlong. It's not a bad front row to be springing off the bench from an Ireland perspective, so you would make them firm favourites for this game. I'm not sure what the spread is looking like for Ireland-Australia on Saturday, but even with like a rookie hooker in that Australia team, we can ask Alan Quinlan about him. He's got a Penga Amosa, if I'm pronouncing that correctly, the rookie hooker there. So he's obviously going up against Rob Herring, which isn't exactly kind of a Sean Cronin level of hooker.
It's a point.
It's a point of a spread?
Yeah.
Right, so it's a lot closer than I thought. I thought it would be a little bit more of a 4 or 5 point spread.
No, I think that, look at our team, you know. We don't have, there's the Australian team named, Gennady at 9. Yeah, so Pocock does start at 6, Michael Hooper at 7, and Israel Folau obviously at 15. Folau and Pocock had a sit down this week and apparently had decided that they were going to put aside their differences. Not a huge fan of that. David Pocock, you had me at when you were chaining yourself to the tree, but making friends with Israel Folau, not so much. Curtly Beale is in at 12. Bernard Foley is 10. So it's a pretty interesting team. How many uncapped players? 3 uncapped players in the matchday 23 for them. And obviously Michael Cheika knows Ireland very well and will want to jab us in our eyes, with his giant finger. So
yeah, he does he hate Ireland, Michael Cheika?
No, but like
I think he hates the Ireland rugby team. I think he looks back fondly in his time in Ireland.
Yeah, I'm sure he loves Ireland.
But I'm sure any opportunity
wants to beat us.
Exactly.
That's what he was like.
I think,
especially Munster.
Yeah, without question. I mean, all those Munster
now
players.
that it's an all Munster halfback pairing.
Well, there you go. Like Joey Carbery, obviously we're not going to see the real Joey Carbery until he goes to Munster. I mean,
until he gets back to Leinster.
He's completely going to play under the radar at this point. You know, Johnny Sexton, he's not going to give away any secrets to him. I wonder what their relationship is going to be like in camp this week. Is it kind of like a Raj Sexton thing immediately?
Did I leave a bit on that tackle there? Sorry about that.
Yeah, exactly. Joey Carbery, that's actually going to be very interesting. I would have liked to have seen Jordan Larmour in there as well, but I'm sure he'll get a start eventually in this test. Hopefully not an injury-enforced one, but I would like to have seen a bit of Larmour starting. You know, we've got Carbery and Larmour. That's the sort of partnership we want in the back row at the moment, or in the backs, I should say.
Yeah. I don't know. Just disappointed. Anyway. So that's the story with the rugby. We'll get more details on Alan Quinlan's thoughts on it a little bit later on. If you want to get in touch with us, obviously, you can drop us a tweet at Off the Ball AM for the show, or at Off the Ball on Twitter. We do also have the final pair of tickets for tonight's Vicar Street Roadshow up for grabs. Kevin Kilban is going to be joined by Ronnie Whelan, Kevin Moran, Ray Houghton, John Giles, Alan Thompson and Jackie McNamara. All you have to do is share the stream and tag a mate to win, either on facebook.com/offtheball, or you can also hit us up on Twitter for that one as well. So yeah, that's the Roadshow tonight from 7 o'clock. You know, obviously try and get there a little bit earlier on if you're heading along. Should be a great night. Yeah, you're going to give me another tutorial on what actually happened in Euro 88? No, we're going to talk about Saipan today. Oh, yeah. All over the back pages of the newspapers. I actually remember Saipan. Where's their biggest Saipan splashes? On the Sun, is it? The Sun, yeah. Let me get the Sun here. Lads were in fear of Roy. When he left, they could breathe. So is this an angle we've seen before in Saipan, that Damien Duff, of course, was speaking on behalf of RTE yesterday as part of their TV launch, and is across all the back pages this morning. Some of them have gone with the angle on England, that they don't have the heart, they don't have a lion's heart, which I thought was an interesting pun, a good pun. Did it get picked up in the UK papers, I wonder? Not yet. Well, they leave it in the Mirror. I'm not sure, like, it's Paul O'Hare writing in the Mirror. I'm not sure, do they communicate with the London office and it gets picked up in the UK? I'm sure it'll eventually spread over the next couple of days. Do they care about Damien Duff? Of course they do, right? It's in the Daily Mail. Well, there you go. It's in the Daily Mail's English website. That's good enough for me in terms of having penetrated the English press. But basically on the Saipan thing, as I say here, the idea of being fearful of Roy Keane is something that we've kind of imagined was always the case, but hasn't been put explicitly into the context of Saipan. Whereas Damien Duff here, he's like, I wasn't afraid of Roy Keane, but some of the older lads, interestingly, were. Like, I was kind of young, cocky, not cocky, but Roy Keane kind of had a lot more respect for him because he was young and plucky, and he kind of took him under his wing, and he wasn't as afraid of him from that perspective. But I think it was the older lads. Maybe one Kevin Kilban could actually tell us, was he afraid of Roy Keane? Some of the players, haven't spoken to them, were at a point in their relationship with Keane where they were kind of ignoring him or avoiding him. Like, they would be kind of walking down the corridor. One Ireland player at that squad has told me that he was walking down the corridor going, oh Jesus, he ducked into a room to avoid Keane. Like, it had got to that point where the relationship was so strained for some of them. Now, that doesn't necessarily follow that on the field having the best player in his position in the world at the time was somehow going to intimidate or carry them. Like, who's he talking about when you think about it? Really, it's Matt Holland, because he's the only one that would have actually been, or is anybody in that defence actually terrified of Roy Keane? I don't think they are. I don't think, I think what Duff is referring to here is like the profile of the player that would have been afraid of him. But then when you look at that profile, it's the older players. It is the Matt Holland, it could be the Gary Breens of the team. Whereas when you look at all those older players in the 2002 team, they all have a temperament which would suggest that they don't have any fear. They're fairly laid back. They're
they're chilled out people, I think, in comparison to Roy Keane.
Yeah,
I don't think they do intimidation.
I'm sure there was far more crack had when Keane is gone. But James Lawton has an interesting piece in the Indo wondering if Duff's remarks suggest that Roy is the wrong person to have around the current Ireland setup, because obviously the current Ireland setup doesn't have any of those strong characters that can just blithely ignore what was going on. I'm not sure I necessarily agree with that, but it's a hot take. You should see the comments on the Daily Mail's piece, which is entitled "Ireland legend Damien Duff dismisses England World Cup chances. Do they want to take a bullet for their country the way an Irish team would?" I mean, it's an interesting choice of language from Duff, considering all the hoo-ha about the gun tattoo over the last 7 days from Raheem Sterling. But, oh my God, those comments. England will always be better in quality, skill and qualify more times than the Irish. Fact. Or would an English captain walk out on his teammates at the World Cup because he wasn't satisfied with the training facilities? Footballers do not need to take a bullet or run through brick walls. They merely need to care and make maximum effort.
That is not a Daily Mail reader right there. That is completely somebody who's lost on the internet and does not read the Daily Mail. That is the nicest Daily Mail comment I've ever heard. What you need is the vociferous, violent commenter who's like who will actually agree with what Duff is saying here, saying that football is all about taking a bullet for your team.
There's the England team talk right there. I'm half English, half Irish. Just appreciate them both doing well. Duff, coming from a country that didn't qualify for World Cup, has never won a World Cup. You sound a bit silly, really. You weren't ever part of a decent Irish team such as Charlton's years at Italia 90 and USA 94. In fact, your own captain walk out of the team days before the World Cup. Need any more lessons on history? There's one a little bit later on. They would take a bullet for each other if they were good enough to qualify in the first place, from Tail Banter. And then it's, if you look back, England didn't qualify from 1962 till 1982, followed by, we won it in 66, you spud. I love the Brits calling us spud. It's like, good man, GF, London.
Maybe he was referring to a spud gun.
Yeah.
A bullet from a spud gun.
Okay, so the newspaper headlines. Great story here about Paul Broderick. I've had knee, 3 ankle surgeries, a splenectomy, a collapsed lung, a ruptured bowel. I've just been unlucky. That's him there on the in the middle. And I think if you can we can't zoom in, but if you come back to me here, I'll show you. This is all a scar. There's like a giant scar right there, which kind of stretches from here all the way down. Stemming from an incident the week before his leaving cert started. He got an elbow and ends up in hospital, and the spleen goes, and then he's not getting any better, and then they realise that his bowel is perforated, and then he's not getting any better, and they realise that his lung is been punctured as well. So that was 18, he's 31 now, it's 13 years ago, and he's still going. Talking about managing his training load, and obviously has been shooting the lights out so far.
Yeah, top scorer in the championship before last weekend. I presume that's still the case.
Yeah.
Unless there's somebody with 3 games under their belt, but certainly with 2 games under his belt. What is it, like 129 or something like that he scored?
I said 119, but
119.
Yeah. Duff, kids want to play rugby nowadays, not football. So this is pretty interesting. Damien Duff, who obviously works with Shamrock Rovers and is part of their setup and sees exactly what people are doing, says that the kids these days have more heroes to look up to from the rugby team than football.
He says that there's people on the streets playing rugby. I'm not sure if that's the case. He says...
I presume he's seen it. You see people with the rugby ball thrown around.
Maybe.
Do you not? I see it.
Well, you obviously navigate in different parts of...
Well, on the green in Marino.
I've never seen...
I see people hurling, and I see people playing football, and I see people playing soccer, but I see rugby ball.
I rarely see it. I rarely see street rugby.
Do you see any other sports on the street?
Yeah, I do all the time.
What do you see?
I see people with hurls and people firing a sliotar up against the wall.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, that's...
What part of Dublin are you in?
I'm in the same as you, Northside.
Right.
Like...
Santry.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's just
Beaumont.
Yeah, Beaumont.
Yeah.
Beaumont, Santry. But maybe that's just more a GAA country. Maybe you're just more of a rugby country kind of guy.
In Marino?
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Not really.
No.
But this is like another kind of angle on the rugby versus other sports divide.
Well, this is rugby country.
Yeah, exactly. it's like Duff adding kind of more fuel to the flames of the Neil Francis debate here, which I thought is, which I think is actually the most interesting angle on it. That, you know, maybe people will actually play football again on a street level if the Ireland team actually just play better football, which I think is true to a certain extent. But let's not forget that people have Ronaldo and Messi penetrating their living rooms as well.
Yeah, every day, all the time, for free in the Champions League and also in the World Cup. So we'll wait and see exactly what happens with the next Champions League deal and whether or not it's all going to be free to air, how much will be free to air, if it's just going to be that one game that RT have. IRFU turned down women's test series in Australia. Great story from Gavin Cummins here. The Australian Women's Rugby proposed the series and offered to cover some costs. So this would have been at the same time, a 3-test series. All the IRFU had to do was pay for flights to head down. Accommodation would have been covered, but they decided not to do that. And I don't know, it's just kind of the IRFU have decided that the sevens game is the future for women's rugby as opposed to the 15s, and this seems like it was a bit of an opportunity missed, certainly to raise the profile of the women's team. And then Bundy Aki was obviously out doing press yesterday because he's in all the papers talking about how he's got to find a lot of tickets for his extended family in the 3 Australian cities where they're playing.
You're done?
I can go on. I can do the Times Ireland edition here for you. Schmidt's had to show faith in Carbery. We know that's true. Ireland may ring changes. Ireland have rung the changes for the first test in Brisbane. Rice says no to West Ham deal. Fair play. This is interesting. Declan Rice has 1 year left on his contract. He's on $3,000 a week. They've offered him 10. He's like, go and shite. Come back to me now when you've got like 50 grand a week in a 4-year deal or 80 grand a week in a 4-year deal. But I know that if I'm free as a 20-year-old, having come through the English system, I'm going to be one of the most attractive prospects in the Premier League at the end of this season. And I'll be able to name my price and my signing on fee.
10 grand is the stingiest offer I've seen in football all transfer windows so far. I know it's only just opened, but like that's absolutely outrageous. The fact that he's only on 3 grand is actually outrageous in itself. I didn't know that. I think, is that the first time you've seen that?
Yeah.
Well, I know he's kind of come through as an academy
so that's fair
prospect.
enough. Like, he's probably been on 3 grand a week for like 3 years. So, yeah, he's doing all right. It's 150 grand a year for a 17-year-old.
Is it kind of a bit of Russian roulette turning down a 10 grand a week contract because of the figure?
No. Keep it. No. He's like, what's the worst that can happen? They put him in the reserves for a year and he wastes away. He plays a lot of games for Ireland. Ireland keep him in the shop window. And at the end of that year, it's like, hey, everybody, I can play in midfield. I can play centre back. I can play left back. And I'm available for 70 grand a week. And I'm going to meet your quotient of qualified players who come through the system.
I think he'd take 25. I don't think he wants 70 right yet.
Why not?
Well, of course he wants 70.
That's the deal. It's football. That's the price.
Like 70 grand a week for a player of his age is absolutely extortionate. Unless you're like...
But that's the going rate in the Premier League these days. I don't know what the actual average Premier League salary is. So whatever that is, you want to add that and then add a little bit on extra because, you know, he could still play for England.
Yeah, he could. We'll move on to the Heralds. Dubs can be best ever, says Ray Cosgrove. An interesting take here.
Talking about the Golden State Warriors after their third win of the series last night.
Well, that's it. We were having this conversation earlier. Who are actually the best Dubs? The Dubs are the Dubs. Of course, you know, the Warriors are known as the Dubs because of, that's how they say W over there. They just abbreviate everything, so...
Now I get it.
Yeah.
Thanks for explaining that.
Well, I was kind of explaining to anybody at home who wasn't aware, but, you know...
Honestly, I didn't. I was like, well, what is it? Why do they call them the Dubs?
Well, there you go. Now
for W.
You learn something new every day. So the Dubs are the Dubs. Which are the best team? I think I'm probably going to go with the GAA version of the Dubs. I know that's kind of being blasphemous, given I'm from Kerry, but you know I think that you can't look past what this Dublin team are doing as a better team than what the Dubs are doing, the Warriors.
Except that the Warriors have come up against LeBron in his peak, and they've only fallen once to him.
Okay, but I'm talking about current.
This year.
Well, no, in terms of what they've won already. If they go back to back now, I mean, they've only won 1 in a row. They've never won back to back.
But it's going to be 3 of the last 4.
Yeah, Dublin have
4
of the last 5.
Yeah.
And could be 5 of the next 6.
You would say that Steph Curry has changed basketball and that Steve Kerr has changed basketball by realising that, we've got a guy who can throw it in from anywhere. Those 3 points are actually more valuable than 2 points and far less effort.
Dublin have also changed football.
How?
Jim Gavin has changed football.
How?
Well, by enlarging this pool of staff that you can kind of tap into. And I know that may sound cynical.
By a backroom team.
By a backroom team.
By money.
By like taking GAA into the modern era, no? Like, I mean, the idea of a basketball coach would have been...
We're nitpicking here, but you're talking about like which is the greatest team. It's like you have to pick nits.
Yeah, you do, for sure. So Dubs versus Dubs, let us know what you think on that one. But I'm definitely going for Dublin.
I think Steph Curry's probably just had a... Because you haven't seen that before. I don't know enough about basketball history, but like it seems to me like deciding that suddenly, we're going to shoot threes all game and we have a bunch of players who can do it is different, no?
Yeah.
It's the first time that sport has been revolutionised in that way in the professional era since they added the 3-point line.
But can they take full credit for that, or can the Houston Rockets take full credit for that?
I don't know. I mean,
Daryl Morey, like Morey ball is what they call it. A coin on the term money ball there, Jared, just by changing the letter N to the letter R. In case you didn't realise what that one was. I'm not patronising you, don't worry. Daryl Morey, he revolutionised basketball in terms of the 3-point line, not Steve Kerr. That's potentially the hottest take as well. That the Dubs, as in the Warriors, have actually revolutionised basketball to the 3-point line.
They haven't?
They haven't. I mean, it's Houston, really. Houston were the ones who said, listen, if we just shoot all the threes, it doesn't matter how much we miss, as long as we make a few every game, we're going to win the majority of basketball games.
Steph Curry's the best at it.
Yeah, if Houston Rockets had Steph Curry, then there would be merit in your argument. On the back of the mirror, it's Lions don't have the heart. Duff gives England no chance. That's Paul O'Hare's story, as you mentioned earlier on. It's been picked up in the Mail across the channel. We've yet to see it on the back page of any of the UK titles, which I'll move on to. But before that, actually, it's the Daily Mail lacking heart as well. Duff rubbishes England hopes at World Cup. They say they just don't like it up them and they don't have the heart, basically. Burke for more. This is an exclusive this morning by Mark McAdam on the back of the Irish Daily Star. Graham Burke to Preston, which would be an interesting move. It's kind of one that was inevitable, wasn't it? 300 grand for Graham Burke, by the way. It's like when it comes to the transfer fee that a League of Ireland club will actually get, we don't actually see what the sell-on fee is going to be here, but that's the key point, isn't it, really? Well,
the chances are that he just doesn't get sold on and runs a contract down or has a 3-year contract and doesn't. So you'd like them to be getting £1 million for this kind of thing because that's what the player's worth. We're probably a while away from that, aren't we?
A while away from the
players getting £1 million transfer fees.
Well, like, is there a possibility that, or you mean like from the League of Ireland?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, directly. Yeah, I think we're a bit away from it. I think if 300 grand is going for the best player currently in the League of Ireland, then that would suggest we're another 3 or 4 years away from that potentially. What was Shawnee Maguire's transfer fee? 650 or something?
Was it?
I think so, off the top of my head. I'm sure Tommy will let us know in our ear in just a moment. Danny Rose is dominating the back pages in the UK this morning. Rose might battle with depression. On the eve of the World Cup finals, the England full-back reveals how a long-term injury, the suicide of an uncle and a shooting at his home pushed him to the lowest point. And on the back of the Guardian, it's I had to get away from Tottenham. Rose reveals tumultuous year, depression, injury and family trauma. It's heavy stuff from Danny Rose. It's honest stuff.
And fair play to him for like at this point coming out and talking about it.
Yeah, like if there's a stigma in society about mental health, then the stigma is enhanced in a football dressing room, you'd imagine. But he's been so open about this. It makes for some really heavy reading, but it is an important read. If you've got a copy of the Telegraph or the Guardian this morning, which we can get into a little bit later on.
The Irish Examiner this morning, electric picnic, Tommy Martin and how hurling is rocking while football thrums away on a banjo. And then Duff, how Saipan exit, let the lads breathe. It's going to take a serious team to stop the kingdom, reckons Jack O'Connor, piling the pressure on Eamon Fitzmaurice. And Denman, the horse, has died. An incredible athlete tributes Flo as legendary chaser Denman dies. So is this not like the worst thing that could possibly have happened to Kerry when their brand new team scores 32 points, look like an unstoppable force, and all of a sudden where they were below the radar, they're now bleep, 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 bleep.
It's like they were above the radar as soon as, I guess a week ago. When did Tomás O'Shea kind of say, oh no, it was actually Saturday, it was right before the game, and he was like, I don't actually expect Kerry to challenge Dublin. I expect them to beat Dublin this year, and I expect them to beat a team that actually can define Dublin's dominance, aka end it.
Yeah.
And you know, I think that's when they've been bleeping above the radar for the last...
You're not supposed to like underperform, you know, run them hard on Sunday morning before if they're going too well, get them out there and do like a full contact 3-hour training session before the Kerry game or the Clare game, so they scrape home by a few points. Jesus,
I think there was genuine worry about that Clare game. Not worry, but genuine concern that they could have had a battle for 50 or 60 minutes. So obviously that didn't materialise. And unfortunately, I know this is kind of a bit of a tangential point, but I think the glory days of the Munster Championship were 2 years ago when Clare and Tip were actually decent. Like Clare getting to an All-Ireland quarter-final 2 years ago, Tip getting to an All-Ireland semi-final the same year. We should have been looking around down in Munster thinking these are amazing days. Kerry still haven't got beaten, obviously, in Munster in any of those glory years that I'm talking about, but at least they weren't hockeying teams off the pitch. But I think now they realise that the glory days of Clare and Tip, maybe not Tip because of the age profile of the team, but maybe Clare's bubble has burst to a certain extent. But yeah, the point I was trying to make is that they needed to stay above the radar. They needed to be hot on Sunday because there was a possibility of an upset, a vague possibility and a distant one, but a possibility nonetheless.
Yeah.
So it's not ideal, basically.
No.
They couldn't afford to be kind of coy about things. And certainly Tomás O'Shea didn't do us any favours by writing that column on Saturday.
They're right there with Dublin now, you'd say.
Yeah. Yeah, you would have to put them second favourites for the All-Ireland. Are they second favourites for the All-Ireland?
I think so, yeah.
I think so. So, yeah, I think there would be consensus number 2, to coin an American phrase there, for the All-Ireland. I've said it for the last couple of weeks, I think they will get to the All-Ireland and I think Dublin will beat them. I think Dublin are going to do the 4 in a row and then the 5 in a row. But yeah, like this Kerry team is going places. They will win the All-Ireland in 2020, I think.
Why not try and, make it this year? I mean...
Oh, well,
Kerry are 92, Dublin 6-4 on.
They will try their best to do it this year. I'm not saying they're not going to try and do it.
Clear second favourites. Galway 9s, Mayo 10, Donegal 16, Tyrone, forget about it, 25s.
Galway are 9-1.
Yeah.
That's...
third favourites.
Yeah, that's a very interesting sort of drift, I'd imagine. Or were they always 9-1 post a win against Mayo?
I'm not sure.
Just because of that performance. It seems, even if you just forget odds for a moment, if you just think about the discourse around Galway, it's certainly changed a lot since that Mayo game, as in people have kind of got a little bit cold on Galway, despite the fact that they've beaten the All-Ireland runners-up. Yeah,
well, I just think that it's a long out road for a new team like Galway, whereas with Kerry and Dublin, who are going to be separated from each other, like, it looks like everything is kind of aligning for a Dublin-Kerry final.
Yeah, as long as Kerry get over Cork, who hockeyed a better team than Clare in the Munster semi-final. It's great to, so the glory days of Munster football are over in terms of the volume of teams that are able to compete, but maybe the glory days of Kerry Cork are just around the corner again.
Well, let's wait and see. One last paper for you. It's the Irish News. This is a Tyrone story on the back here. Devlin urging fringe players to step up. That's because they've got a whole heap of injuries, and that's been given a bit of confidence to Meath fans around these parts over the last while. A slew of reported injuries to Tyrone has left them significantly weakened, and this opens the door for those fringe players to come in and make a change.
Tommy just said in my ear that Meath are going to beat them. It's the most confident I've heard a Meath man in a long time. I think there is a huge potential of banana skin there in that one at the weekend.
We'll preview all the weekend's GAA action with Cahair O'Kane. I mean, that would definitely be... I would be shocked if Meath managed to pull that out. But what's this? The spread's only 3 points in that one.
But talk about poking the bear and the Bears come out to play with Tyrone. Like with the whole Sean Kavanagh thing. Like, what are you doing reacting to a pundit? Like saying stuff like Tyrone have always in the past preached, we're kind of, not a siege mentality is employed, but we certainly don't care what other people say about us. I think everybody has to have that mentality to succeed.
Yeah.
And straight away, Sean Kavanagh says something and they come out swinging immediately, which I just think is poor PR. And it may only be PR, we'll see at the weekend for sure, but I just think that there is a sense that things aren't right in Tyrone. There's a little bit of a rash nature about this management setup at the moment, and it's like in fairness, if Sean Kavanagh wanted to try and diminish Tyrone's chances, he's succeeded.
Or else he's going to bring them together. I mean, it must be pretty awkward, as somebody pointed out, for his brother in the middle of that. It's like, what do I do here? I mean, obviously, he's my brother and I'm going to defend him, so, shut up. Or does it like, that's just Sean. What do you do? I don't know.
I think that's the attitude that really prevails through the team. That's just Sean, whereas that selector who came out, it's stupid.
You don't think he did it off his own bat, though? You have to assume that that's the management team saying, off you go and say that, you speak like that and we'll back you up. That it's
you would assume so, but with the playing group, I'd say it's Sean just being Sean.
Right, we'll get back into that with Cahair O'Kane in a couple of minutes' time. Ireland's Craig Breen is competing at the Rally Italia Sardegna over the weekend. Here's how he's getting on.
Hi, Craig Breen here, driver for the Citroen Total Abu Dhabi World Rally team, and here in Sardinia, ready to start the next round of the World Rally Championship. The last couple of days we've had the recce Tuesday and Wednesday, really difficult roads here, gravel surface but quite narrow and nadry in some places, so to try and drive these big World Rally cars down these narrow roads is quite difficult in some places. So, but yeah, looking forward to it. It's a rally I don't have so much experience of. I did it just last year for the first time in a big car, so but still looking forward to it. And the rally starts tomorrow night with a super special stage, and then the rally starts proper with the real stages on Friday morning and continues right the way on until Sunday. So difficult rally in store. Weather is a bit mixed. It's given some rain for tomorrow and maybe into Friday morning, and a lot hotter and drier conditions as the weekend goes on. So difficult one for man and machine. But we're ready and we're looking forward to it.
Well, Sardinia looks pretty sweet, doesn't it? That's Craig Breen there. We'll keep an eye on how he's getting on over the next few days at the Rally Italia in Sardinia. Now, let's talk about the weekend's football action. The main focus of good quality stuff happens to involve a bunch of the more interesting Ulster teams, and Cahair O'Kane of the Irish News is with us. Good morning to you, Cahair. How's it going?
Morning, Jerome. How's things?
Yeah, pretty good. Come here. You've been arguing with a bunch of Donegal people on Twitter overnight following your article yesterday when you were saying that Declan Bonner alone can't rid Donegal of their defensive mindset. Is he trying to rid them of a defensive mindset, or is he trying to just make sure that the defence is solid but that they also make use of the glittering array of attacking talent they have?
Well, this is it. I suppose he is. Definitely, Donegal have had attacking players, and to be fair to Rory Gallagher, I know he's probably back in the spotlight having set Fermanagh up the way he did last week, but in fairness to him, in his couple of years in Donegal, he actually started the process of bringing them out of this and sort of recognised, as you say, the wealth of attacking talent you have. You look through their forward line, and I don't think, even before Ulster started this year, I don't think there would have been anybody.
Oh, there you go. Bit of an issue there with the line.
Is that some of those Donegal Twitter people having hacked his feed, I wonder?
He had some great stats actually in his piece talking about the Donegal Club Championship. The average score per team in the Donegal Club final since 2005 is 1-7.
Oh my God.
1-5 was enough for Guidor against Unions in 06. 09 took Unions to glory in 2014. 1-7 was enough for them in 2012. And Glen Swilly won in 2011 by hitting 1-8.
Maybe they played 10 minutes a half and we just don't know it.
Yeah, because the weather's so bad. It's like, here, get out there, do the 10 minutes, off you go.
Exactly. They never get an hour of good weather in Donegal, so that's it. That's definitely the explanation for that.
My favourite story about the weather in Donegal was from Brendan Devaney, who was like, look, one of the pitches that we played in, if you kind of kicked the ball past the end line, it was into the Atlantic, so, that's why we had that close hand passing style and good quality control. I think we got Cahair back. How are you doing?
Getting there.
Yeah, sorry about that. You were saying that if you look through their forward line, they've got some really brilliant talent.
Brilliant talent. Some of the best. You look at their ability to kick long range scores, which is going to be kind of crucial as they go through the rest of Ulster. I would imagine Down will try and set up quite deep against them, and Fermanagh will set up very deep against them if it is Donegal in the Ulster finals. So the like of Murphy, Kieran Thompson, or McNeilis, even Paddy McBrearty, if he comes out a bit, they can all kick points from beyond the blanket, and that's something that Tyrone don't have, and it's something that Monaghan don't have. So they are the best attacking force in Ulster, and I suppose Declan Bonner recognised that and wanted to sort of utilise that better than maybe Rory Gallagher and Jim McGuinness both had.
Yeah. How's he doing it though? So it's not just long range point scoring as well, because it's this brilliant running game.
Absolutely. Like, I suppose he struggled initially to find the balance between defence and attack, because in the early stages of the National League they were too open, and they were very much wanting to play man for man, and they found that they just kind of couldn't do it. And I don't think any team can do it as such, just play blatantly man for man football. But they've developed a wee bit as the tail end of the league has come, and I suppose they're still not. That's the thing about them; they're still not quite there yet, because even though they scored 220 and 216 in their 2 games in Ulster, which is big scoring, they conceded 115 and not 16, and both Cavan and Derry kicked 13 wides each. So, there's still work to be done, and in terms of going into the Super 8 or wherever they end up, they're probably not the defensive package that they need to be, which is almost ironic in terms of Donegal. But as you say, that the long range point taking is one thing, but they have just such a pace from deep that Ryan McHugh always existed, and Hugh McFadden is now coming on to a bit of ball and playing. You have Owen Ban Gallagher, who has come through and has had a brilliant year, playing sort of weak cornerback, weak swing halfback. He's attacking. They're trying to implement this Dublin idea of keeping players wide and coming in off and running at angles. But I suppose it'll only be tested when it comes to Croke Park, how well they've mastered the balance of it.
Have you noticed a shift, Cahair, in Declan Bonner's approach to Gaelic football at all? Because obviously he was famously criticised with his under-21 team and being worse than the Black Death, which was in relation to that Cavan under-21 team. Like, how has he evolved to the point now where we're all lauding him as an attacking master plan initiator?
Well, in fairness to Declan, he has defended himself against that, and I can see why. I don't really understand where that came from either. I haven't seen that Donegal under-21 team, in their final 2 games in Ulster last year, they kicked 317 in each of them, which the Black Death doesn't kick 317. So that was kind of always a wee bit false. Now the minor team he had maybe 3 or 4 years ago, he got to an All-Ireland final, and then he took a side that was strong favourites going into Ulster, back into the minors the following year, and they got a bit of a shock from Derry, and they were probably playing a defensive style at that stage. But I think he evolved fairly quickly with the game, and by the time he took those 2 under-21 teams, I don't think that criticism was fair at all, and I don't think it's any grand change in his plan over the last 6 or 8 months. I think it's been a 2 or 3 year process for him.
So one of the things that is kind of a hallmark of the Ulster campaign so far is that everybody assumes largely that Monaghan are going to win, and so it's all about Monaghan, what they're going to do and the evolution of them and whether or not they're realistic semi-final contenders. And then all of a sudden it's Fermanagh coming through and going, ooh, is there any prospect that Down can do what Fermanagh did last week and actually make us all go, ooh, we should have been talking a bit more about Down in the build-up to this game?
Well, anybody remembers last year's Ulster semi-final, they beat Monaghan out of absolutely nowhere. They had a poor Division 2 campaign and came to Armagh with, rated as no hopers. I think Monaghan beat them by 12 or 13 points the year previous, and all anybody was talking about was Down kind of achieving a better level of respectability. And of course they came out and flattened Monaghan that day. And the thing about Down is they're a side that could trouble Donegal, because Donegal, as we said, will give any team chances. They are conceding chances, and Down have forwards, and they have, I always look at Down and think they're less than the sum of their parts sometimes, because they have, you go through their 15 and they have some serious footballers, and they just obviously they produced it against Monaghan last year, but they don't produce it as often as they probably should. And so they are a side that, everybody talks about the gander getting up and down. When they get about a bit of momentum in a game, they're very, very hard to stop. And that would be the same, if they got a run on Donegal and got themselves into a lead and got a bit of momentum in the game, they would be, they'd be a serious, serious force.
Just on that point that Ger was making there about Monaghan kind of falling flat at the weekend against Fermanagh, you were making the point in the Irish News as well this week that win actually shows why nobody from Ulster will win the All-Ireland.
Yeah, absolutely. I can't give anything but praise and credit to Fermanagh, because that's the way they had to set up to win that game. You know, they're coming out of Division 3. They know they don't have the attacking arsenal to go toe-to-toe with pretty much anybody. And Rory Gallagher, you know, the system that he put in place and the work rate that he got out of those players and the way that they went about their business on Sunday was just, you know, I know it's not particularly attractive, but it was absolutely brilliant. And I'm sure Fermanagh don't care, but they are the reason, because, you know, Monaghan and Tyrone both, if anybody watched them during the National League, they would have seen both teams wanting to kick the ball more. Like Tyrone set their stall out this year to play with 2 men up front the whole time. And Monaghan, like I saw Monaghan twice in the early weeks of the league playing with 3 up front, playing with 3 men inside. But the reality is that there's no point in doing that if you meet a setup like Fermanagh's on Sunday. And even like Monaghan and Tyrone were a bit scared of each other and kind of both set up the same way, so it became a running game that day as well. Fermanagh, you know, you weren't going to kick the ball through that wall of green shirts, and you had to try and run it. Obviously, Fermanagh were set up for that and met the runners brilliantly. But because no team in Ulster then is coming through the Ulster Championship kicking the ball frequently enough and working on that style of play, then they're getting to Croke Park, and as we've seen in the last couple of years when Ulster teams have gone to Croke Park, they've struggled so badly because they're very deep and defensive, and they don't use the foot pass enough on the counter-attack, and they're trying to run the ball 140 yards.
There was a minute at the start of the second half, maybe 5 minutes in, where a long ball was finally pinged into Conor McManus. He turned and swivelled, and it just went wide. And instead of them doing it again to allow him to find his range, it was like, well, that didn't work. He just kicked it wide off it. And you were like, it made perfect sense to keep going.
Well, I think maybe, you know, it's the players will make decisions based on what they see in front of them, and that was probably a rare occasion when Fermanagh hadn't got a double or triple sweeper in front of him. You know, Conor McManus obviously stays inside. You know, Monaghan very, very seldom bring him out, and that, you know, that might have been the way forward for Monaghan, to bring him into the half forward line and try and get him on ball, because he's able to kick points from that bit further out. But you know, the idea of them kicking ball, they were only going to be kicking it. It had to be absolutely inch perfect past 2 or 3 sweepers, and obviously Shea Cullen had a good handle on McManus as well in terms of the man for man job. So, you know, it was going to be a serious ask to kick a ball to Conor McManus, and I suppose they were just set up to run, and the problem was that they didn't have any energy in the running game, and the amount of times Monaghan ran into tackles with single runners, and it was so uncharacteristic of them. Like, I remember Desi Ward carrying a ball into 5 men in the middle of the Fermanagh goal, and absolutely no support, nobody near him. He actually got a shot away and put it wide, but you know, he was completely off balance, and it was just that was the kind of thing Monaghan were doing all day, and it was so unlike them, but it was so much as well down to what Fermanagh did, and you can only praise them for it.
Your lead story in the back of the Irish News this morning is about Gavin Devlin talking about the fringe players in Tyrone needing to step up. Just how many of them do we actually expect to be forced into action at the weekend, and how serious is the injury crisis? You know, I'm minded of the Waterford hurling injury crisis, which all of a sudden kind of dissipated in the middle of last week, and suddenly Austin Gleeson's back, Park Barney's back. Like, is this something similar, Tyrone, or Portmouth in this just a little bit?
Well, I think the issue with Tyrone is not so much the number of injuries. It's that the injuries have all occurred in the one place where they can't really afford them. You know, Mark Bradley's done ankle. I think it's ankle ligaments. He's out for a few weeks. Lee Brennan's done his hamstring again. I think he's gone for 8 weeks. Darren McCurry left the panel earlier in the year, and those, you know, Tyrone probably only had 4 recognised inside forwards on the panel, and that's 3 of them gone. So it's a crisis in that sense. In that, you know, Conor McAlliskey is now probably the only, you know, the only designated inside forward that they have on the squad, and they might end up, you know, pushing Cathal McKeon inside or trying to find some way around that. Obviously they'll probably set up to play the usual running game anyway, and maybe not utilise the inside forward that much as it is. But it's Peter Hart's a significant loss as well, obviously suspended from the Monaghan game for a late strike. But it's not, you know, Tyrone were regarded within Ulster as having the depth, you know, over the last few years to cope with pretty much anything, and there still is. Ironically, I'm not sure that there's a huge depth there defensively in terms of what they could change. In terms of a back, certainly their 3 fullbacks. They're probably a bit light there, but in that middle third, they have a lot of options. And I don't think, they've called in Rory Sludden, brother Niall Sludden, on the panel, but I don't think you'll see Rory thrown straight into action or anything like that. It's not that severe a crisis. There are plenty of options before him, and he'll probably, like the fringe players that we're talking about, the players that he'd probably introduce, have all had a bit of championship experience. I don't think we'll see anything too fresh or too new.
What do you think is the biggest reason, Cahair, that we have this perception, and it is a perception that manifests itself in reality, that Tyrone just don't have the forwards to compete with the big teams? Is it the talent coming through, or is the talent there and they're being inhibited by a game plan?
Well, I suppose everybody read Sean Kavanagh's comments over the last few weeks, and Gavin Devlin had a cut back at him in the Irish News last week, and I suppose, to be honest, I would probably fall on Gavin Devlin's side of the argument, in that the players that Sean Kavanagh listed as potentially coming through. Darren McCurry was the one out of the 4 who really made a shape out of it. And probably Darren McCurry got the rawest deal of anybody. He was I think he's the 6th top scorer currently playing in Ulster, and yet Mickey Hart hadn't. I don't think he'd started him in a game in 2 years, and he used him off the bench, so I can see why he was frustrated, and I can see the argument stacking up with him, in that respect. But in terms of the rest of it, I honestly think that Mickey Hart gets a lot of criticism for the style of play, and sometimes the Dublin game last year, they just didn't come out early enough, and the game was going inside 10 minutes and they had to come out there. They didn't come out till half time, and by that stage it was it was no hope. But I think the style of play that he has kind of masks the fact that they just don't have a squad of players that will win in All Ireland at present. And I think it maybe does get the best out of them. You saw what Dublin did to them when their defence was left a wee bit exposed last year, man for man. At times they just couldn't cope. They were overrun, and the defensive thing gives them that bit of cover. They have they have serious legs and pace on the break, so it's a style of play that does suit. And there's nobody like Lee Brennan was the clamour, if you like. He was the one forward in Tyrone club football that people would have said could make a difference. And alright, it took Mickey Hart a while to give him the opportunity, but he did. And outside of that, there's nobody jumping out at you in Tyrone club football at the minute that you're saying, he's scoring a bagful in club games. He should be playing. He should be playing inside for the county. There's just not that depth of scoring options there.
A quick question about Derry and Kildare. This game's on in Owen Begg. Derry aren't favourites for this, but really they should be, because they're the team who has a little bit of something about them against a Kildare team who are in tailspin.
Probably fair enough. I would say Derry took more from the Donegal game than they lost, because even within the county there weren't an awful lot giving them any chance of anything, and people were probably happy if they avoided a hammering, and they did. It was a respectable performance considering all the length of time that Damien McErlean had his full squad together to kind of put a game plan. Obviously there were holes in that, and defensively they had big numbers back, but they weren't. You compare them to how Fermanagh were structured last week and how they knew where Monaghan were going to run and what they were going to do, whereas Derry were just kind of numbers back and try and frustrate Donegal whatever way we can. So it's a bit of a work in progress for them, but I would say they'll be a bit more confident now than they were 3 weeks ago. And Kildare, as you say, are just coming in off just a horrendous run. I was at the Leinster final last year where they played Dublin, and I really thought that, here's a side that is coming and might challenge, and the wheels have just completely fallen off. I'm not close enough to know why exactly. Obviously, I've seen the headlines about Keane O'Neill and why that has happened, but it strikes me that they're coming to Derry, like I say, that just wants the year to be over.
Why is the game in Owen Begg instead of Celtic Park? What's the benefit and thinking behind that?
Well, it's the first game in Owen Begg. It's the first time Derry have played in Owen Begg in 18 months, because the pitch has been closed since last August, September, I think, since the club championship semi-finals for remedial work, which was, strange that it's a fairly new pitch. It's only about 4 or 5 years old, and it needed to be closed for 8 or 9 months already. But I think it's ready to go again now, and it is. Derry got 400 and 500 at 2 of their National League games in Celtic Park. It's not happy place in terms of supporters. They don't like going there. It's a long way from the hub of football in Derry, and Owenbeg is right in there's a standing stone at Owenbeg that is the very centre of County Derry, so there could be no more central point, so it's a better venue for it. Alright,
good stuff, Cara. Enjoy the weekend. Thanks a million.
No, thanks, Naz.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm worried.
Cute Ger Gilroy absolutely lambasts Kildare in tactical move to downplay expectations in home county is what I see as a headline on offtheball.com a little bit later on.
There you go. But they're just a team in free fall at the moment, and it's hard to arrest that. This is it in terms of this current management, unfortunately. Like, I think that they should have been doubling down at the start of the year and saying, look, whatever happens in Division 1, this is the management team we're going to stick with. We've decided that this is the group, but Kildare has had this kind of churn over the last number of years where since the putsch against McGeeney, and then Jason Ryan came in really on a hiding to nothing, and now they've decided halfway through this year, it's like, we couldn't keep our Division 1 status. He's got to go, is the rumblings. It's like it makes no sense, It
would have been a great fixture 10 years ago, Derry versus Kildare. A bad draw in the second round of the qualifiers would mean elimination for whoever wins this game anyway, so I hate to be grim about a game, but...
Yeah, although, you could see either of these two teams putting a bit of a run together.
Yeah, but they need to get lucky draws.
There's loads of lucky draws, though.
Yeah, you don't need a lot of luck to proceed to round 3 of the qualifiers. Yeah. It's round 4 really when you're kind of it's not fish in a barrel anymore in terms of the draw. Tyrone or Meath, Tyrone are going to win that game. Despite what we've heard from our producer earlier on, that Meath are definitely going to win that game. Donegal are going to win. So you've got down in the qualifiers along with Tyrone. You've got 2 plucky Ulster opposition there, potentially Derry as well. It is a bit of when I say fish in a barrel, it's not exactly fish in a barrel. It's not like an easy win round 1 of the qualifiers. Your Leitrim's and your Londons are done.
Yeah.
So there's no guaranteed bankers of Kildare, which to be fair, Kildare need at the moment. They need a bit of a tomato can, and Derry ain't a tomato can.
Derry away is not.
No.
And the difference between a Derry team in the league and a Kildare team in the league looks very pronounced, but then the difference between Carlow and Kildare, it turns out, wasn't pronounced, because at least, Derry don't have that real sense of momentum that Carlow did, but at the same time, you would definitely be concerned about that. I see Tommy has that confidence about this Meath team and what they might be able to do, and again, being at home, I don't see that as being a straightforward Tyrone win with all the stuff that's going on at the moment.
No, definitely not. That's going to be a contest right up to the 60th minute, but Tyrone surely have too much at the back and in midfield for this Meath team to score enough to actually win this game once it gets to the 70th odd minute. I don't think Meath have the legs in that department, in the forward department. I know that's Tyrone's problem as well, ironically, when it comes to scoring. I think that's going to let Meath down just because of how strong Tyrone are at the back. Let's not forget that this is still a team that we were tipping for. Some people were tipping for All-Ireland final last year. Let's not forget how excited we were for Dublin against Tyrone last year. So that can't all have been misplaced.
Well, it turns out. It was complete nonsense.
But
the evidence of our eyes suggests that was a complete nonsense, that those two teams are not in any way close to each other, and not tactically, not technically, not strength in depth, not breadth of ambition, not style of play. Those two teams are not close to each other.
No, I guess not.
But can you make the case that it will be within 10 points if they were to meet tomorrow in a proper championship match?
Well, definitely not. Tyrone have disimproved since last year, especially with the list of injuries they have. Cahair talks about there, and I know we've had a pop at the Tyrone management earlier on in the show, but they are right. I would probably fall down on their side as well, similar to Cahair, in the idea of the talent not being available. They just don't have outrageously good scoring forwards. All they need is one Conor McManus.
Yeah.
Not to win an All-Ireland, but to be back to where they were maybe before the Dublin game last year, when we're talking about them as potential All-Ireland contenders. But like it's.
But there are no Conor McManuses really. Most counties don't have them, so you need a style of play that's going to free your forwards up and give them the opportunity to score, and they don't have that.
Yeah, I say they need one Conor McManus. Like producing a Conor McManus is easy, or it happens every single year with a decent minor or something. No, he's an outrageous talent. There's no question about it. Like you look at somebody like Stephen O'Neill, probably doesn't have as much talent as Conor McManus, but was more effective than Conor McManus on the biggest stage.
I mean, Stephen O'Neill was sensational. He probably does have the same amount of talent as Conor McManus. Like, you could still make the case that Stephen O'Neill did it in bigger games.
Oh, that's what I'm saying. Like, he 100% did it in bigger games. He did it in All-Ireland finals. Like, he was a player of the year. There's no question that he was...
Yeah, I'd say that, like
he was a more effective footballer.
If we're playing a match for my life, I'm still probably taking Stephen O'Neill.
Yeah, so am I. But that doesn't mean he's got more talent than Conor McManus.
All right, let's move on. We're going to talk about the rugby. The expected Ireland 15 was pretty much announced in the papers this morning and then confirmed by the Ireland setup at around 7 o'clock this morning. So here's Keith Wood talking about the team.
Cracking team.
Yeah, it's still a very strong team, isn't it?
Really good team, and with I would say, look, I haven't been on for a couple of weeks. What Leinster have done at the end of the season with, I would have said, with a team of stars, of 5 or 6 big stars, all on almost their last legs for the semi-finals and finals, I think is pretty impressive. I think if they look back on it, and of course they'll be proud of what they've done, but if they see the amount of rugby that some of their players have played in over the last 24 months, they have to be incredibly proud of their player management, their strength and conditioning, their nutrition, all those elements that have kept those players at that level and kind of got the most out of them.
Yeah.
At times they kind of, it was like chess. Some of the matches, the way they played, they just didn't take risks. They just made certain that they did different things, and I think it was phenomenal. They'll all be absolutely peeved at the idea that they're not picked, because they're bitter enough, because they all want to play and they all want to do well. But I'm actually delighted, because I think it means some players just get an extra little bit of time, like even a week. Even if you only have 1 session or 2 sessions in a week, but you're not preparing for a match at the weekend, I mean, that kind of tops up the batteries. It doesn't top them up to the top.
Sure.
These guys are in desperate need of a proper summer holiday and a proper pre-season again.
Yeah.
Yeah, so just the Ireland team confirmation of it this morning came. Jack McGrath, Rob Herring and John Ryan is the front row. It's James Ryan and Ian Henderson in the second row. It's Peter O'Mahony who captains the team. Jordy Murphy and CJ Stander, 6, 7 and 8. Conor Murray and Joey Carbery is the 9 and 10 partnership. We're going to be seeing a lot of that into the future. Keith Earls and Jacob Stockdale, and Rob Kearney is the back 3 with Robbie Henshaw and Bundy Aki back in harness as the centre partnership. The subs bench, Sean Cronin, Cian Healy, Tyke Furlong, which is an amazing front row to be able to spring from the bench at some point. Quinn Rue and Jack Conan are the other forward cover. Kieran Marmie and Johnny Sexton and Jordan Larmour on the bench there as well. So this is going to be pretty interesting. It's high risk.
It is high risk. It's like beautifully high risk in kind of a calculated way. And there is the opportunity to take further risks. If it's tied at 20 points all with 10 minutes to go and Jordan Larmour still isn't off the bench, Joe Schmidt is bringing him on.
Yeah, but I like not starting Sexton. It also keeps that captaincy debate nicely boiling. It's like, who's going to be the captain now? Is it Peter O'Mahony? Well, Peter O'Mahony for this game. O'Mahony's going to be rested for the next game. Johnny Sexton's going to come in and captain the team. And then when they're both on the field of play, who is the captain?
Yeah, Neil Tracy out in the office earlier on was pondering the question, when was the last time Johnny Sexton started at number 22 for Ireland?
For Ireland?
Yeah. And I'm pretty sure, I didn't actually get the answer, but I'm pretty sure I overheard the answer being that famous Wales game in the World Cup.
Right.
So, terrible omen right there, if you believe in omens.
It's quite a long time ago at this point.
It is. It just goes to show that it's going to be just odd seeing the number 22 painted on his back.
Like, clearly what Schmidt's doing is making sure that he's got the strength and depth. There's an interesting column today from Neil Francis where it probably bears a few of the points. He's still very pissed off about the fact that Joey Carbery has been moved, and makes the point that this is on the back of the Madigan situation. it was like, oh, Madigan hadn't played enough rugby at 10, and that's why we lost the Argentina game. But the previous week, Madigan had played 50-odd minutes against France.
It was like one of the most clutch performances by a 10 we'd seen,
and
with
been
that amount of
sensational.
experience.
And so suddenly he gets less good at 10 a week later when he's starting on the back of not having played enough Pro 14 games. Complete bullshit he's calling. He is calling bullshit on this and saying, why don't we challenge this? How do we let the IRFU people peddle these lines? There's an N in there. How do we let them peddle these lines? He's making the point that the forwards were brilliant that week against France, and so therefore your 10 is really good. The following week, Peter O'Mahony's gone, Paul O'Connell is gone, Sean O'Brien is gone, and somebody else is gone.
Yeah, but...
And so therefore the forwards were no good, and actually it's strength and depth in the forwards that you need. Okay, so Sexton's gone as well.
How are we to know, though, that if Ian Madigan hadn't had more experience at top 14 rugby, he would have been even more sensational the week beforehand?
But
just
here's the
because
point.
he was
We
good
didn't
doesn't
lose the
mean
game.
he...
We didn't lose the game against Argentina because Madigan was playing fewer Pro 14 games at 10. We lost the game against Argentina because the entire system fell apart. Our defence out wide was absolutely rubbish. He didn't pick the right team either. He had Luke Fitzgerald on the bench when Fitzgerald clearly should have started, comes on and plays the best game of his tournament and is actually happy at the end of the game that he's played well, even though we've got hockeyed. So
that doesn't mean that Ian Madigan was lacking in experience. What you're saying there is all valid reasons. But it's
then
just...
the Madigan thing is a complete red herring. To use Madigan as an excuse to move Joey Carbery to Munster is a red herring. Is the point of this piece from Neil Francis?
I think it's an opportunity to slam the decision to allow Carbery to move to Munster. That's all this is. And it's almost a red herring in itself to actually...
Oh, he's entitled to do that. It's like, so Munster and Leinster are rivals, right? But as soon as a good player comes through in a position, you already have somebody, we'll have you. Like, so say the next best 6 in Ireland was currently on Munster's books. It's like, okay, thanks very much. Off you come. Leinster need a 6. Off you go.
Leinster don't need a 6.
But like, maybe they do, you know?
Yeah.
You always need better players. Like, at what point does the rivalry matter? It doesn't matter anymore. This is the end of it.
Maybe I maintain that it's not a permanent thing, this ending of the rivalry. It's a postponement of the rivalry until the end of the World Cup. It is our best ever opportunity to end our barren spell of never making a semi-finals in a World Cup. It is quite possibly the best team we've ever had in Irish rugby.
We've always said that. Before every World Cup, 18 months out from every World Cup, it's like, oh, we're going to do, we're finally going to reach a semi-finals.
Exactly.
Wow, look at our ambition.
And whatever it did, the saying goes, insanity is repetition is the... Yeah. You know what I was going to say. Like, doing that again would have been stupid. They've actually switched it up this year. They've had to think outside the box, and postponing a rivalry is certainly outside the box thinking.
Well, there's real bite to this St. Stephen's Day fixture where the two teams are like best of buddies. They all went to the same schools, and who knows, they might all end up on the same club team next year. It's hard to find to that.
Because of Joey Carbery. So you're saying that Joey Carbery holds the keys to the Munster-Leinster rivalry? Well,
the rivalry has been completely eroded by the fact that what we're seeing is actually just the Ireland team training now.
That's professional sport in an island the size of Ireland, though. That's just the nature of it. It's unique in the sense that it's not like Ireland against England.
So are you going to tune into those games now and going, there's a proper bite in this? I really can't wait to see what happens here. I'll be like...
Of course I am. They're fighting against each other for places on the plane to...
We're watching a training session now.
No, we're not.
We are.
That's nonsense. We are not watching a training session. Like,
Effectively, we're watching training sessions.
I really hope that's just like a kind of deliberate hyperbole.
But that's what it feels like.
I don't know whether to entertain this anymore or not, because like I haven't been here the last 2 days, and the Carbery move happened on Thursday.
We didn't talk about it.
You didn't talk about it?
No.
So, like, do you want to get something off your chest here about how your campaign to keep Joey Carbery at Leinster failed?
No, I'm just reading Neil Francis here this morning and I'm making the points that Fran was making.
Kind of like Nigel Farage had a step down after UKIP had a terrible general election. That's the sort of thing I was expecting this morning.
I suspect Munster would rather surgically cut the hamstrings from their best player than hand him over to Leinster if Schmidt demanded that had to be done.
Yeah, if it was going the other way, I'll accept that point. Munster fans will be more up in arms than Leinster fans like you are.
The Leinster fans are up in arms. He's saying it was like a death in the family.
Yeah. Like it will be on a par, if not worse. Like, there's no question about it. There is truth to what you're saying, but I think to say that the rivalry has been eroded
But it clearly doesn't matter. The rivalry clearly doesn't matter. It's just a function of.
It hasn't mattered the season just gone either.
They just played in the semi-finals. It was supposed to.
So
they're supposed to drive standards against each other. The whole point of having these teams is that they try and kill each other when they're playing against each other, and then they join together and they're stronger because they drive, which is exactly what happened when we're going to hear from Alan Quinlan.
Munster are stronger now, so that makes it a better rivalry. They've closed the gap between them.
We'll see. They're not
a better competitive rivalry.
They're not stronger on the basis of their own work. They're stronger on the basis of work done by Leinster
within the bounds of their own jurisdiction, which does matter. If you pay for all these wages, for the centralised contracts, which is whatever for Munster players, but it's all your.
Even that is complete. The system is weighted against Munster because they don't have as many centrally contracted players. I don't understand why you think this is okay as a Munster supporter that that's great, we'll just take your players and then it'll be fine. There's no doubt that he's going to be.
Well, I think it's fine because it's great for Munster. I think there will be.
But it's not. It's actually completely eroding the Munster identity.
How? How is Joey Carbery moving to Munster eroding the Munster identity?
But okay, so you're focused specifically on that one instance, but all of the players who haven't come through the Munster system, they buy into it and it's grand. But in 10 years' time, when it's 2 players from the academy, 10 from the Leinster academy, what happens then?
No, this is. I go back to what I was saying, that this is a temporary solution to. Not even
when was the last time a temporary solution was actually only a temporary solution? It wasn't the new normal.
It's a temporary light bulb. It's outside the box thinking of a way of getting everybody who has got outrageous talent. Well, cliches like death in the family, red herring. I heard those only coming from your mouth over the last few minutes.
Alan Quinlan is going to save us here. Quinny, good morning to you. How you doing?
Morning, lads. How are you?
Yeah, we're arguing over the Joey Carbery thing, which we'll park for a minute because this is our first time to properly see.
I knew you would be, Ger. I knew you would be.
This is our first time to properly see the 9-10 axis, the new all-Munster halfback pairing.
Yeah, look, it's. I tell you, I was a bit surprised when I was at the press conference here when the team was announced, and there was surprise. Maybe it was rumoured earlier today that possibly Carbery would start. I didn't think it would happen maybe until the second or third test. I thought Joe Schmidt would pick the strongest possible team for this first game. But obviously he's made a number of changes, and the big standout one is Joey Carbery. So it's a great opportunity. He's had some criticism before, Joe Schmidt, for being a little bit conservative. But he's given 6 guys who are getting an opportunity here who didn't start against England. Robbie Henshaw was one of those. He would normally be a starter. So Carbery is the big story, obviously, and it's a great opportunity for him. And after this initial little bit of surprise, I get a feeling of excitement. I think it's a big test environment for him. They're very powerful here in Suncorp Stadium in Brisbane. The last time the Aussies played here, they beat New Zealand. So there's going to be a fair bit of pressure. And Michael Check will certainly try and target Joey Carbery.
The other big change is that the entire front row, the first choice front row, is on the bench. Which, look, it's not that unusual. You see this kind of sometimes in big matches where, particularly in the front row, players get rested and rotated in and out. But for the first test, away from home, it's a bit of a risk. He's rolling the dice on that one.
It is a risk, yeah. And I think, you always talk about impact off the bench. It's a serious impact off the bench. I think John Ryan in particular is someone that, Greg Feek has a lot of time for. I think he's worked a lot with him in the last 2 seasons, and he's made a lot of improvements. I know Andrew Porter has kind of bulldozed his way onto the scene and is very, very powerful. But I think it's an opportunity for John Ryan to fight his way back into the mix, if you like. You need 3 good tight heads for particularly with the World Cup next year. So it's a great opportunity for him. I think Rob Herring as well. It's I was surprised Sean Conaghy didn't start. Having him off the bench, a lot of his caps have come off the bench. So I was surprised he didn't start. I think he'll be fuming that he's not starting, but it is an opportunity for Rob Herring. And Jack McGrath, of course, look, Healy, McGrath, there's not a lot between those guys. They're 2 world-class loose heads. So Jack McGrath certainly want to go out and prove a point and try and fight for that number 1 jersey back. So it is a bit disjointed when you make 3 changes, but having the impact off the bench is certainly something that's a positive thing for them. If things are struggling a little bit, and look, let's be honest, I mean this respectfully, they're not the most dominant force in world rugby, the Australians up front, particularly in that front row. So playing the new hooker for the Reds, playing Mosa, he's a very, very powerful player. He comes in for his first cap. So a little bit surprised, Ger, with the selections, but it's a great opportunity. I think, as I said, the Carbery one is just unbelievably exciting.
The Australia team selected is obviously pretty strong as well. We've seen that they've picked Folau, they've picked
David Pocock.
Yeah, in the same team.
Yeah, I'm not sure is Alan still there. Alan, I actually just wanted to ask you about that, about Folau and Pocock. Obviously, the whole disagreement over the same-sex marriage, like it's a bizarre thing, but it is also bizarre in the way that Pocock has accepted Folau back into his friend circle, and I wonder how much of an impact would that actually have in the dressing room, those sort of disagreements, those sort of personal things that they are telling the press has been parked and has been put aside, and what happens on the pitch stays on the pitch, sort of thing.
Yeah, I think, look, it's been mentioned a lot here. It's on all the papers here about Folau. One thing you can say, you can't argue with Folau's performances. He's been outstanding for the Waratahs, superb again last weekend, and he's a world-class player. He's certainly the best aerial taker of the ball in world rugby, and that's one of his big strengths. And his attacking threat is superb. He scored a lot of tries this year in Super Rugby. But yeah, if I was in that dressing room, I think it's interesting when Pocock his beliefs are the exact opposite of Folau. Will it make a huge difference? I think when the heat of the battle, when you're out playing with teammates at any level, I think you kind of park that stuff to one side. It's not ideal. Michael Checkers had to answer a fair few questions about it this week, but it's something that I think the players will be able to park to one side. They'll not be holding hands or chatting or hugging each other after the match, I think, and they don't have to hang around with each other, and not everybody gets on perfectly with everybody in all teams, but it's certainly probably a distraction that Australia could do without.
Czech obviously knows Ireland really well, has had a very interesting relationship with the respective Irish provinces over the times, revered by Leinster fans. I'm not sure that the Munster fans think that highly of Cheika for what he managed to do from Leinster's perspective, but he's been a really interesting Australia coach. Like you think of the image of him breaking that door in the match, and also almost reaching a level of success with Australia that many thought was going to be beyond the team. So they're in a bit of a rebuilding phase. They're bringing a bunch of new caps through at the moment as well. What level of expectation do you have that we're going to see a big performance from them, given that it's their first international of the season effectively?
Well, if you go back, Jared, to the last match they played, they were unbeaten so well by Scotland in Murrayfield last November. So I think they conceded 12 tries in 2 games, which is an horrendous stat for any team. And the performances have been very inconsistent. The last time they played here in Brisbane, they beat the All Blacks. So they'll certainly be trying to draw on that result, not what happened in November. They started that November series quite well by beating Wales, but then were beaten by England and hammered by Scotland. So I think there's a certain amount of pressure on him. They've been inconsistent. I was looking at some, the fixtures, Ireland's fixtures since the start of 2017. They started at Six Nations in 2017. They lost against Scotland, obviously, in Wales in that Six Nations, but they've won 12 matches in a row. If you go back the same length of time with Australia, they played 14 as well. They've won 7 and lost 7. And the only significant win I can see in there is against New Zealand. A couple of others against Fiji, Japan, Argentina in the Rugby Championship. They drew with South Africa. So it's been pretty inconsistent. And, I think, look, his big belief is to try and be ready for a World Cup and really, really build that depth going forward to a World Cup as well. So it's, it's like I say, his performances have been very inconsistent of his team, and he'll certainly not want to lose a Test series to Ireland, particularly given his time coaching in Leinster.
Yeah, just one last thing for me, Alan. Just on that point of Cheika and maybe his relationship with Ireland, what's your sense of his relationship with Australian fans at the moment? Like, particularly what's happened with the clubs and the situation there with the 6-day turnaround for some of the players, which he wasn't happy with. Like, is that kind of tricky relationship that he navigates with the clubs, although it's a very different setup there where they wouldn't have the same power that the RFU would have over that. There's not the same link up, obviously, but has that manifested itself in the support for the team at all?
Well, I think there's 46,000 seats sold out and sold for the test on Saturday against the Aussies in Brisbane. So I think there's a lot of fans turning up. Of course, there's a lot of Irish here in Australia, and they'll turn up to it as well. But very, very strange that the Irish players had to, or the Aussie players had to play in Super Rugby last weekend. It wouldn't happen here. The players are managed better. So he didn't really get any assistance particularly from the Brumbies coach, because Pocock and CEO had to play last Sunday, which is absolutely crazy. They're playing on a Sunday before 6 days before a test match, so their preparation would have been very limited in the early part of the week. So it's unheard of, really, and it's strange that kind of unity from the Super Rugby coaches isn't there for the player, isn't there for Michael Cheika. Surprising, really.
Who do you make favourites?
Say that again, Ger, sorry.
Who's going to win?
I was very confident before the selection that Ireland would start the series well and win the first test. Obviously, that's tempered a little bit now by the selections. I think the team is still good enough. I thought Australia would be a little bit vulnerable in the first test. Like I said, given their players were playing Super Rugby last weekend, and historically they've been a bit slow to start. To start well in their summer tours and rugby championships. So it's tempered a little bit now, but I still think Ireland are going to win it. I think the impact off the bench will be significant, and there's still a lot of very good Irish players in that team.
All right, good stuff, Alan. Thanks a million. Enjoy the game.
Cheers, lads.
Ireland against Australia, obviously live at Sky Sports on Saturday morning. We're about 11 o'clock, I think.
I think so. I'm not quite sure. You caught me off guard there with that one. I haven't sat down and planned out my TV schedule at the weekend. It's interesting there to hear that he doesn't share my confidence in terms of this team, that the team almost kind of moved him in a direction that felt like I was confident Ireland were going to win, then I saw the team, and then I wasn't so confident anymore. I think he's still kind of leaning more towards Ireland at this point, but I think the team is a great team. I think it's an exciting selection. I think everybody who's there has already proved that they're good enough, but there's extra hunger there, particularly in that front row.
Yeah, I mean,
and particularly at 10, obviously.
We need to see a good bit more of John Ryan and Rob Herring, really. Obviously, Jack McGrath, nobody's any doubts about.
Ryan's proved himself, I think, quite well at this point. Herring, obviously, is the one person there that you could pick out as a potential weakness, but it's all potentials. There's nothing to suggest that Rob Herring is going to have a disaster on Saturday. It's all just how he handles the situation. And are Ireland going down without any pressure? Is there a sense that this is kind of like a free pop at Australia? I don't really think that that's the case, but I think there is an element of, just with this team selection, that there is an element of experimentation about this.
Well, I think they're going down trying to win the series 3-0. That's some sort of pressure. Keep the running total of victories going, because then there's the chance for the record against the All Blacks in Dublin. That was one of the things that they were... We're talking about. One quick comment on this. 1 point you're missing, Ger, from Neil Casey. Says, Carbery, as an ambitious 10, wants to be a starter for Ireland in Japan. Staying at Leinster means that's impossible. Moving gives him an outside chance, same as any professional in any league. Talk of 2023 is rubbish because of injuries. Yeah, I think talk of 2023 is completely rubbish. But everybody knows that if Sexton is fit, Sexton is playing, irrespective. Joey Carbery could be the best player in the world for the next year, and Sexton's starting because he is Joe Schmidt's spirit animal. He is absolutely starting for Ireland. He's deservedly so, you know.
Yeah, nobody's disputing that. Nobody's disputing that. If Johnny Sexton is fit, he will start every game. Well, maybe not the last one or two games in the pool, given I can't remember who they are, but they're fairly easy games. Obviously, it's kind of like the opposite of last year, where we had our 3 easy games, then into Italy, then into France, where it was a slow build, and obviously disaster struck against France, despite the fact that I think I tweeted that it was the greatest result in the history of Irish rugby. Little did I know that it would be such a disastrous win.
A Pyrrhic victory.
Exactly. So with that the other way around, Joey Carbery will get a little bit of experience at the end of the pool stage, you'd imagine, and will he put the pressure on Jonathan Sexton? Potentially, but I just think how close the World Cup is at this point, it's impossible to overlook Sexton.
One last opportunity for you to enter our competition. We've got a pair of tickets for tonight's Vicar Street Roadshow up for grabs. Kevin Kilban and Nathan are going to be joined by Ronnie Whelan, Kevin Moore and Ray Houghton, and John Giles looking back at obviously Euro 88, Italian 90, and looking forward to the World Cup, which kicks off next week. Plus, we'll have a Celtic feature with Alan Thompson and Jackie McNamara as well. Just share the stream or tag a friend to win. Now, one final piece of rugby video for you before we talk about Sligo Rovers. Here is Maddie Williams talking to us about the problems which are besetting Australian rugby at the minute.
I think at international level, it'll be very popular, and I think the massive Irish community that's in Australia will be turning up. I think the tests will be very well attended. It's a great series for the Irish boys. Last time I did it, 79. I remember going as a kid watching it myself, and so it doesn't happen every day. I think they'll be very well attended. The top end of Australian rugby is still tremendously strong. Michael Checker does a great job. They'll put out a very, very strong 23. We're Australian rugby. I'm actually in Narbonne watching the international under-20 tournament at the moment with Australia and Ireland and France playing. Watched a number of games here. And that's in this local area where I am, Narbonne, Perpignan and Béziers. And, the bottom end of Australian rugby, the development end, the kids, the academies, that's where they're not putting any money in, or not sufficient money and resources. The top end is exceptionally well resourced. So it's that bottom end that is struggling. So the tests will still be very, very competitive. I'd probably favour Australia in the series. I think, Ireland might grab one. If I hear the selections right, I thought the first one mightn't be as easy as I thought it would be for them, because the Australians have had such a limited preparation. But it's the bottom end of Australian rugby, mate, that's, breaks. To be honest, I was speaking to Woody about it. It just breaks my heart.
Yeah, there's really good detail on that in one of the papers today about, I think it's Jack Anderson's column in the Examiner, actually talking about how the playing numbers have really fallen off a cliff. 27th biggest sport in Australia by playing numbers among a certain age group.
That's mad. I was actually having that conversation with friends the other day, I don't know why, about where does rugby union actually rank in Australia in terms of popularity. Clearly it's way down in terms of playing numbers, but even just in terms of
coverage,
I'd say, is it even in the top three?
No.
Rugby league, AFL, and
what else? The second test,
another sport, surfing.
I mean, athletics. I don't know.
Yeah, no,
basketball. They're big NBA fans down there, but also the second test is on at the same time as the Socceroos, who are in Ireland's group in the World Cup. So it'll be interesting to see which one draws a bigger audience. Obviously, the Football World Cup will draw a much bigger audience than the rugby test.
Especially after Ireland have crushed them in Test 1 and the whole nation is low on confidence.
Yeah.
Well, obviously they don't care about rugby union, so that point doesn't really stand, does it?
We're going I'm delighted to say that we're announcing this morning a brand new sponsorship arrangement with Sligo Rovers. Off the Ball is becoming Sligo's official media partner, and to help announce the deal we had Raf Kotaro and Adam Morgan in studio yesterday. Here's Adam Morgan telling us about his route to Sligo, which brought him playing at Anfield for Liverpool under Brendan Rodgers, even before sliding down to the 7th tier of English football. Pretty amazing journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm not going to hide it. I had very mental problems. I was all over the place mentally, and that's what I believe. It wasn't ever my ability. It was just, I'd say 70% of football's in your head, and without going into it too much, I got kicked a few times on the way down and stuff like that, which led me to be in a bad place, personally. But I think I showed my character that I still want to play football. I believe I can get to a decent level of football. And the manager here, Jared, has been unbelievable with me. He's done things for me that no one's ever done in my career. And, he showed me a bit of love, which what I needed.
What's he done for you?
Well, he showed confidence. He didn't need to bring me over. He didn't need to. If you look at what's happened, I've went from club to club and stuff like that. Never really been a consistent stayer at a club. But now I feel like a completely new man. I needed to get out of the rut I was in and come over and start to become a man, and that's what I'm trying to do. And he's played me every game I've been fit for. I was scoring goals, and unfortunately now I've got a little bit of an injury, but he's just done things for me off the pitch and speaking to me, and that's what I need, and that's what I need to get the best out of myself, and I believe I'll show that again when I'm over here.
What's the sales pitch when somebody says come to Sligo? How does that work? Or what is that relationship that you go, yeah, actually, you know, that's exactly what I need right now?
Yeah, you know, I'm used to living in big cities and stuff like that, and always have, and I just needed to get out the way and where I was concentrate just on my football. You know, like I said, I had a few problems, which is mentally. I've never ever doubted my ability to play football. It's always been upstairs with me, and so when he come here, he said,
in terms of confidence.
Yeah, confidence, yeah, and you know, absolutely confidence. If things aren't going well, it spirals. Like I'm saying about our form, it becomes a momentum, and my momentum was a downward spiral. It was kept going down and down. I was expecting each season, oh, this doesn't matter, I'll go down again, and I go down. And then I come to a stage where I weren't happy with my life, and I wanted to try and rebuild. I was only 23 at the time when I came here. You know, I've just turned 24, and I believe there's still a way back for me to where I belong, but with coming back onto the gaffer, what he's done for me is give me a new lease of life. I was so easy going without, yeah, whatever, this is it, but now I want to show what I can do again.
So there was a wake-up call somewhere along the way that actually you need to get back playing?
Absolutely, there's been more than one wake-up call, you know what I mean, and then I come in here and look around some of the lads and some of the ability in this team, and I'm glad to be part of it. I'm part of this journey that we're all going on.
Yeah.
And I want to give my part to the team as best I can and show me what ability I've got, and I'll show how mentally strong I've become with all the knockbacks I've had, all the setbacks I've had. I just want to show how much.
And how did he hear about you, or how did that happen? What was that process?
There's a couple of things. There's a couple of things really. I think he's really good friends with Paul Dalglish. I think he was best man at his wedding. So and I was very, very close to signing for Ottawa Fury, who Paul Dalglish is the manager of. Who obviously Paul Dalglish is the son of Kenny Dalglish, who gave me my contract at Liverpool and stuff like that. So I've known both very well over the years, both of them. And then there was another player who was at Sligo, who was one of my friends, and so he'd speak to the gaffer for me, and then just, you know, I was ongoing talks and with them, and again I didn't know whether I was mentally prepared to, but then having spoken to him, I knew that he had helped me, and then I felt it was the best move for me. And
how soon after you arrived did you go, yeah, okay, I can do this. This feels good?
Straight away. I knew before I even went, just speaking to the man himself, I knew that he wanted to help me, because like one day when it is all over, I'll come out and I'll say, you know, I don't know who I want it here, but I will come out and say exactly what's always happened to me. And I want to help people with mental strength when I do finish football, because it's so important in the game. You know, I've seen so many players with the most ability in the world, but if something happens that affects them mentally, they're a different kind of person and player. You can't, unless you're mentally strong, you can't perform to the best of your ability. And I believe I'm mentally strong now, and I just want to, again, now show the best of my ability.
Because it's not something that you can tell people you need to do this, but actually they sometimes need help to understand exactly what that means, or how to learn for themselves what that means.
Yeah, absolutely. If it's never happened to you, then you don't understand. You know, I look at people like now with like Tyson Fury. You know, he was the best heavyweight boxer in the world, and he just went missing for 3 years. But it wasn't because he ever lost his ability. He's still the best, but he was mentally unstable at the time. You know, he was a lot further on the ladder what he done, but you look at all different kinds of football players who suffer with it. You know, football.
Are you talking about depression or bipolar, that kind of stuff?
Depression is a massive thing. You know, if you're expecting one thing and it's not happening, you become depressed. It's a footballer's life is a different way of life to maybe, you know, the normal working man. I think, you know, you go to train at 10, you finish at 2, you need to fill gaps. There's not a lot to do, so you become depressed sometimes, and that happened to me. That happened to me. So I fell away. I fell out of love with football. I've never shied away from saying that. I fell out of love with it. But now coming here, I've got the love back. It's a big football town. You know, everyone knows you. Everyone wants you to do well, and I believe I've done quite well so far. You know, there's a lot more to come from me. You know, and after the break, that's what I want to show.
Raf, you've obviously seen pretty much everything in your time at Sligo. You kind of you've been there on and off for 18 years. Yeah. So, like when you have players of Adam's ability coming into the squad, you kind of understand exactly the journey that he's on, and how important it is that Sligo does have access to talent.
Yeah. Well, like when you're attracting players like that to Sligo, it says a lot. about it. Obviously, Jared, had a massive hand in Adam coming, and he proved obviously in the first couple of games he was flying. He had a little bit of momentum, with 4 goals, and obviously then the injury had came and that hampered him a little bit. But like he said there, he's got that mental strength now. He's working hard to get back to where he wants to be, and that's putting the ball in the back of the net.
Yeah, tell us a bit about your own relationship with Sligo. Why did you stick around all the years?
I wouldn't say it was sticking around. It's home for me. I went to the games as a kid. My dad would have brought me to the games as a young boy, say when I was around 10 or 12 years of age. So it was kind of, from then there was a bit of an affiliation with the club as a supporter.
Yeah.
I think I've told this story before. Is my first actual playing for Sligo Rovers was when Tony Fagan was the manager of the reserves. So I was in Tubbercurry, my hometown. My brother-in-law now, actually, who he happens to be now, was playing with the reserves at the time, and I was just sitting on the square, as we call it in Tubber, having a little chat to him, and up comes the bus. Anyways, Tony Fagan comes out of the bus. He goes, "Who's this fella?" Me brother-in-law now says, "Ralph Cortaro. Has he got boots?" And I was, I think, 15 at the time, and I says, "Yeah, my house is like 2 minutes up the road. Go grab your boots when you're coming with us." Brought me to Galway, and I think I came on in that game for about 10 or 12 minutes. And Tony himself was actually playing. We were short a few players, so that's exactly how the whole thing kind of started. That was my first introduction as playing for Sligo Rovers in that capacity.
Am I right in saying you're on the verge of breaking Tony Fagan's record for appearances? Is that right?
I'm close enough. I'll be honest with you, I don't know the numbers offhand. I don't know. I've been told.
Does 8 sound about right?
It could be. I've been told that I'm very, very close. It's not something I think about, to be honest with you. I want to play every game that I can possibly play. But
yeah,
it's been mentioned to me now this year a few times. So yeah, getting really, really close to it. And
that's a nice story, though.
It's honest to God. That's exactly how it happened, and it's funny now that you say it and you say that. It's been mentioned to me a few times this year that I could possibly break it, but it's not something that I think about at all.
Yeah, I think for the rest of the country, and particularly in a league like the League of Ireland, where it's hard to remain loyal sometimes when clubs, their fortunes wax and wane, but it is a remarkable loyalty. You've played 2 seasons away from Sligo in your entire career.
Yeah, 2006 I was at Galway for a year, and 2010 I was at Bows for a year. So bar those 2, I've been with Sligo all of my career. You know? And look, football is football. Sometimes you'll go back, and sometimes you need to go away maybe to realise what you had. And in my case, I think that's the way it was.
So the years away actually helped.
100%.
Yeah,
it made me realise that I was a home bird, and the grass was no greener on the other side, as they'd say.
Yeah. Adam, what age were you when Liverpool released you? Was it 18, 19?
19. Yeah, I had 6 months left on my contract, and it came a time where I could leave, and I had 5-6 offers, and I had to make my mind up in 24 hours. So it was a bit of a hectic. And listen, I'm the biggest home bird ever. Like Raf saying, I am the biggest home bird. I ended up moving 4.5 hours away from home on my own, buying my first property, living on my own. Didn't know how to cook, didn't know how to clean. I was lost. I was honestly lost, and then that's what I'm saying. That affects everything. If you're not mentally right, you won't perform on the pitch. That's what kind of happened to me. I moved to Yeovil and went downhill from there. I can't lie. I'm not going to sit here and say, it was someone else's fault. It was just, with these circumstances, I weren't ready.
But that's the thing. Like, how many 18-year-olds are ready to go and live on their own and run their own finances and do all the stuff that you're supposed to do, like get insurance for the car? Like, how are you supposed to learn that stuff?
I couldn't have done half of it without my parents. You know what I mean? And I still don't really know how to cook now, but I'm getting better, but because I was always living at home, I would never knew anything different other than driving 15 minutes to training every single day, doing my stuff, And
how long had you been at Liverpool? What age did you sign for them?
Started from Liverpool when I was 5 years old.
Right.
Went all the way up.
So you get institutionalised?
That's it, but I didn't know any difference. I wasn't ever in any threat to not get a new contract, anything like that. I always went up through the age groups, and the hardest part was being in and around the first team. I ended up making 3 first team appearances, but at the time, like, if someone said to me, they was probably deserved. I was scoring every single week for the reserves. I probably deserved the chance, and then I weren't at that level. I weren't quite. I'm not ashamed to say I had to compete with Luis Suarez, Daniel Sturridge, Fabio Barini. Players were far better than me, and you know that now. But I did believe I did deserve my chance. And then, like you're saying, if you're not mentally strong, and you're not used to moving away on a drop of an hat, you can struggle, and that's what happened to me. No, I didn't lose any ability overnight or anything like that. It's all mental in football, and I can't stress that enough to people when they ask. It's if a little lad come to me and ask for advice, or a little lad's parents, I'd say make sure you teach him how to be a man as quick as you can. That'd be my advice.
What would your advice be to yourself as an 18-year-old now? Like, so Brendan Rodgers calls you into the office and says, I just don't think physically you're ready for this. Yeah. And you're outside afterwards. If you could tap yourself on the shoulder and say,
"And do it again," what
would you say?
Oh, it's a difficult question on the spot, but it's I'd kind of from like, there was no one before me who I could look up to and learn from, and you're too proud to ask. You know, the first team players, like, what should I do? If I'd go back now, I'd go straight to the captain or to Jamie Carragher and say, what should I do here? And because you think, but at the time it's different when you're in that scenario. You can't go and ask your heroes for advice or anyone for advice because you're too proud at the time. You at 18, you think you're a man, you think you know it all, but you're far from it. There's nothing to be embarrassed about asking for help. That's how you grow and ask for help. I look at some of the lads now, I think I could give you so much help, like, but the people that live in a different world, like, it's from that league to real life, it's a completely different world. And you know, I'd look at myself and just say, I'd probably pick a different team, to be fair, where I went to.
Somewhere closer to home.
Somewhere closer to home. You know, there was options there, but this was playing in the Championship week in, week out. But like I said, I weren't ready. I needed a couple more years to, you know, grow mentally and physically.